For the third time in 7 weeks, Derry suffered a chastening championship defeat in Celtic Park on Sunday, this time shipping 3 goals to Armagh. And while it was no doubt a statement win for Kieran McGeeney's men and arguably the best victory of his tenure to date, the big question many people have after the game is how have Derry fallen so far since winning the Division 1 title in Croke Park on Easter Sunday? Welcome to the Throwing Football Show. Will Slattery here with you. I'm delighted to be joined for our chat today by Clerkin and Colm Keys. And Colm, you were in Derry yesterday to watch that game unfold. And although we've seen them lose to Donegal and concede 4 goals and lose to Galway and concede 2, to see Armagh score 3 and arguably squandered 3 or 4 other very good goal chances was very stark. And as I mentioned in the intro, like when Derry beat Dublin, they looked primed to join Dublin and Kerry and make it a big 3 in terms of the runners and riders for this year's Sam Maguire. But now they've fallen so far, and while they're technically still in the championship, it's hard to see them mounting a serious challenge at this stage. Like, how would you assess what's happened over the last 7 weeks and yesterday when it seemed to hit a new low?
Yeah, I felt yesterday was a new low for Derry in terms of how far they have fallen since the league final. League final was 9 weeks ago, and at that stage, rightly, we considered themselves just in the slipstream. We were on this, myself and Dick were on the Monday morning after that league final, praising a performance full of courage and adventure and everything else that went with it. Owen McAvoy getting forward to score 2 goals. He's provided the real impetus during the league for them. And in the 9 weeks since, they've gone to Portugal, obviously, for a training trip, and then they were hit by the shock and awe of that Donegal performance in Celtic Park. And you'd say, right, that's a reset. Will they absorb the lessons? And looking back at the Galway game, you'd say, well, maybe to a degree they did. They were caught by one breakaway goal at a time, Cian Darcy's goal in the second half of that game, at a time when they were pushing forward in pursuit of the game with 14 players after Garrett McClintock's red card. But you still think, okay, it was their away game, back at home now, against Armagh. You feel maybe Armagh still, the wounds of the Ulster final may still be there. Obviously not. And Derry go out and do and set up and push forward in the same numbers and with the same structure as they did against Donegal. And it's almost unbelievable that they allowed themselves to be caught as they were. And while we're all for admiring their adventure earlier in the league in pushing certain players forward, and obviously I mentioned McAvoy, to do the same thing over and over again is really... It's poor management for a start. That must be said. This is poor management. It's a systems failure, and that message should have been driven home after the Donegal game. But to continue, it's like the band continuing to play as the Titanic sank. There's no other way of describing it. They got 3 goals, Armagh, yesterday. They obviously had the Connaughey chance early on. After 6 minutes, the warning signs were there. It was a 3v2. Connaughey hit the crossbar. Back out it came. Barry McCambridge had a chance, another 5v3 overlap in the second half, just after half time. And he's a cornerback. He squandered that. But there was at least, when I look back at my notes, there was at least 3 other opportunities. And one of them was Barry McCambridge's just before half time. Tiernan Kelly earlier in the match, and late on Oisín Connaughey, where if they were really ruthless, and Armagh were ruthless yesterday, if they were really ruthless, they would have scored goals, or could have scored goals as well. I think could have is probably the word. So I would say 8 chances, all by the same way, in that Derry players were caught too far up the field and they were so easily opened up. Now, for it to happen once, twice, 3 times as it did against Donegal, but this happened, in truth, this happened 8 times yesterday. So it's a collapse of extraordinary proportions. And yes, they're still in the championship. I got the sense from Mickey Harte that if he was Mickey Harte, the observer, or a manager of another county, he wouldn't want to take this chance. And if that permeates through the whole squad, and if that's the sense that we really shouldn't be here, then it truly is over for Derry. I do think they'll get into second, third place playoff. They'll be on the road to possibly Mayo, possibly Louth, if Louth finish ahead of Monaghan. They could be back down to Inniskeen for that game, or Tyrone or Cork. So that's what they'd be facing if they beat Westmeath. But there's a lot of fragility in Derry, and a lot of the sense that, well, maybe we won't beat Westmeath, and that's at a neutral venue, obviously, in 2 weeks. But I have to say, from where they were 9 weeks ago and for the position we consider them, you could never count on something like this happening to Dublin and Kerry. And that's the benchmark for them. So from that point of view, they are in deep, deep trouble.
Yeah, 3 games, 9 goals conceded. I don't think they've scored a goal either. Like, Mickey Harte only used 2 subs at the weekend, which I think people were surprised about, given the game was really slipping away from them. Dick, Colin touched on a lot of points there. Like, is there anything you want to add in or kind of reinforce? Like, what's your kind of perspective on what's kind of unfolded over the last few weeks?
Yeah, it has been remarkable, and it's this column well documented there. What has happened? The question to be asked now is why. What has gone on that some of it we can see. We see it. Players been injured. We see players not been available. We see ill discipline. But why is it happening? Why have Derry come so quickly back into the pack? Why has their level of intensity, whatever, but players not been available? There's still 15 players, 15 good footballers on the pitch. I wasn't at the game. I was watching it, got highlights, and just some of the Armagh scores, you could just see a different Derry player or mindset in the jersey than what we have seen over the last 2.5 years. They weren't putting in, aggression or intensity into the tackle, into the scoring area. They weren't protecting that D like they have done so effectively over the last number of years. It's and they're sitting, and the indiscipline that we see there, first with Gareth McKinless against Galway and then Kieran McFall, and like that's a symptom of something much more worrying. Let's underlay, and is has Mickey Harte lost the dressing room at this stage? Have the players sort of lost confidence? Do they almost see the year as, well, if we can't win an All-Ireland this year because, we don't believe in our manager, we don't believe in our systems of play and the players that we've lost, let's just wrap it up and go again next year. I don't know. We're all just, trying to make sense of what has been such a dramatic downfall where they, and Mickey Harte made this mistake, would have been heavily criticised and thrown over his tenure that and a number of seasons went too hard in the McKenna Cups and the National Leagues and the Ulster Championships, and when it came to the real white heat of championship, weren't able to step it up and found other people caught up with them. And that is an argument that will be put forward now, that they went too hard and all the stuff that we talked about at the start of the year, but the Glen players coming back, like Conor Glass has lost a bit of form. They've just lost that energy. And that's a combination of possibly, again, this is all hypothesizing. They've stepped back, they've lost an edge, but also then other teams, that aren't going full tilt in January and February and March, they're getting up to championship pace and they're just struggling. And what Donegal done, what Jimmy McGuinness done, they showed a weakness. They showed other teams that have it in their armoury in terms of a long kick out and the physicality around the midfield and hard runners, that if you play brave, if you are brave, there's a weakness in that Derry team that you can exploit. Other teams don't have that, so Derry will get away with it. But Armagh put out big physical men that were able to compete early in the middle, and then they were willing to go long with kickouts. Other teams don't. Other teams will just chip the ball out, and that's their style of play. But to Armagh's credit, they were brave yesterday in Celtic Park, and they got the rewards. So they had to come with a performance like that. Otherwise, Derry could have easily probably still won that game playing poorly. But their weakness was again exposed, as Colin rightly pointed out, absolutely ruthlessly. And whatever, but a couple of goals to 8, 7 or 8 goal chances at a team of that level, like a Tailteann Cup team, if they went up, wouldn't potentially concede that many goal chances at a good team. It really is bizarre what has happened with Derry, and just wait and see. You'll start hearing things starting to murmur out, and different columnists and the Joe Brollies of this world will have a field day. But that's what is likely to happen now over the next couple of weeks. You might start hearing things, so it'll be interesting to see.
Well, even in terms of the murmuring. Sorry, just 1 second, Colin. You mentioned they trip to Portugal. And watching the TV coverage yesterday, Andy McGinley on RTE mentioned, what happened on that Portugal trip. Maybe he kind of made some inference to their training during the game. And I think everyone who's watching that, like myself, was like, even in the office yesterday, we all turned to each other and said, "What happened on this Portugal trip?" So as you say, who knows what's going to come. Colin, were you going to come in there?
I was after the first goal. I thought it was very striking that after Ross McQuillan's opening goal for Armagh Conor Glass was in chase, and the ball came back out to him, and he booted it away off into the corner. And it was a moment of deep frustration that I sensed from Glass. And it was, here we go again. The sense of deja vu. It's happening all over again. And if you look back, you see Glass kicking the ball away as he did. And I thought it was very, very telling that a player would do that. Normally, they'd recover the ball, get the spot, and reset that quickly. But it was exasperation, frustration, whatever you call it, what you like. But you could see it in that moment. And even then, afterwards, Brendan Rodgers gave away the ball for the second goal. I have to say, a great punch from Aaron Mackay. If you look back on that, he punches it with his left, but it goes 20 or 30 meters and into the path of Conor Turbot, who takes off. The nearest pursuer to Conor Turbot is the man who gave the ball away, Brendan Rodgers.
Who was chasing? Where was the rest of the Derry chasers?
Where was everybody else?
What were they doing? It was. You just don't see that in Gaelic football at any level now. That you'd see a screenshot column of 3 players running on goal with nobody following them. Like that. It's just the 12s. If they'd done that, so often you'd be given out to them. You know.
I lost count of marking down 5v3, 4v2, 3v1 here for McQuillan. It was 3v2 for the McQuillan goal. But Brendan Rodgers goes 80 metres to chase Conor Turbot. He gets there. By the time he arrives back, he's flaked. He's a good defender. He's a very good defender. But his effort to try and stop Turbot literally walked around him, popped the ball in, past Oran Lynch, goal number 2. And I just know I marked down that Glass reaction and that Rodgers chase and the futility that was in both. That very, very much was a summation of Derry. Just on that Portugal business, I don't know. Obviously, there's stories go around, but stories go around a lot of counties. But Dick touched on something too: the indiscipline that has crept in. That wasn't happening for Derry for a long time. And you look at Garrett McKinless's stamp, and you look at Kieran McFall's 15 or 16 minutes when he was on the field. He just went around fouling, and obviously Mickey Harte raised the issue of the reaction he got from the Armagh players. But you must hold your discipline in these situations. Derry are chasing a game. It's harder to chase when there's only 14 players. And it was, I think those 2 instances against Galway with McKinless and McFall, symptomatic of where Derry are very much so now. But notwithstanding that, I have to say, and we'll probably touch on this now, Armagh's performance, they were ruthless. They could have been even more ruthless, and I think when they look back at the chances that they created, but the cornerstone of it was their midfield performance. Niall Grimley has come back, and obviously, towards the end of last year, suffered a family tragedy with his brother, and he was really good coming back into the team yesterday. And Ben Creeley, I thought, was outstanding. He came and he won so many kickouts, and we're talking about being in opposition to Glass and Rodgers. Now, Rodgers played a little bit off. He was picking up Brian O'Neill, and Emmett Bradley was there. It was almost as if they had 3 midfielders each in there. But Armagh were utterly dominant against what we would have perceived earlier in the year as the best midfield partnership in the game. That is some turnaround. Yeah,
Dick, I suppose it's probably been long enough before we went to you about Armagh. I think you have to hold your hands up, finally give Kieran McGeeney and Armagh some kudos. I know
hat eaten.
What did you make of that performance?
No, listen, absolute good credit to them. As I said to them, they were brave. They went out there. Plenty of teams could have went up to Derry and maybe dismissed what they'd seen in the previous 2 games against Galway and Donegal. These guys are still very dangerous, and we have to be cautious and we have to be conservative. We're away from home, and keep players in position. Retain your kickouts. Don't drop it out 50-50. And they didn't. They sort of smelt blood, and they went for the jugular, and that always deserves credit. Any team, and we see so much football and teams play so conservative these days that any team that is brave, like Donegal did 2 or 3 weeks previous, they deserve to get their just rewards. And then, listen, I played in so many games that you get a good start, you get a couple of goals, and next thing, it just feels like you're playing you're running on feathers. You're just bouncing off the ground, and you could see that in the Armagh players. They were just full of confidence, and everything just is in sync. Whereas Derry, they're playing the rest of that game like they've got a bag of cement on their back. And really after those couple of goals went in the early days, that just sort of set Armagh, and it never really looked in doubt. It begs the question though, why did Armagh not go with a similarly brave approach in the Ulster final when they had the game won? And even before the game won, they never really went, I felt, in terms of the intensity, the aggression that you need to win big games when everything's on the line. They didn't bring that in Clonus, and they left an Ulster title behind them because, based on what we've seen, not just at the weekend, that there is the potential of a very good Armagh team there, but they have to prove it yet that they can do it when there's something big on the line. There was an element of a free shot up there. Like Derry were very much, as I've written a column, they were like a sort of a dazed puncher on the ropes, and Derry took their shot. They KO'd them when it was there, because there wasn't a whole pile of jeopardy. The pressure was all on Derry. Armagh still weren't expected to win, even though they knew they were in a massive position going up there. So that's a great mindset to be going into any game, and they took full advantage of it. So, as I said, they've definitely advance themselves, but they still need to win a big knockout game against a top tier team when everything's on the line, and they'll have opportunities to do that now. And next up in 2 weeks' time, they'll have Galway, when pretty sure it's the winners of that game will take top seed, which I think everybody is in agreement now, listening to managers and commentary, that finishing top of your group is a carrot worth fighting for in terms of your All-Ireland ambitions, because of the alternative is a fairly treacherous route in terms of the demand. And there's hardly a panel in the country, maybe just Dublin or Kerry, that isn't struggling with the demands of the season. So everyone will want one less game and an extra week's recovery. So And again, remember that Armagh sort of hoodwinked Galway last year in Carrick on Shannon. So Galway will be going into that game saying, right, we've a bit of a revenge on our cards here. So that's the makings of a great game. So the tables have shifted a bit psychologically for Armagh, that the pressure's now on them to follow up that performance. But that's where you want to be. That's what Kieran McGeeney wants to be. He wants his players to be, that they can answer that question, which to date they haven't answered. Now they've an opportunity against Galway. So absolutely, they've take huge credit out of that performance. Now it's a case of backing it up.
Yeah, Colin, who do you see as having the edge going into that game? Galway obviously winning the conference final against Mayo, beating Derry, but now it appears they'll be without Damien Comer, who's obviously the fulcrum of their attack, and without Sean Kelly potentially as well. Rob Finnerty, I think, could be fit according to what Patrick Joyce was saying yesterday. Now, obviously, he might be throwing out some kind of smoke screens ahead of the match in 2 weeks' time. But it looks, if that's the case, it will be advantage Armagh.
It will be advantage Armagh, and I think Armagh will take so much away from Celtic Park. And you put yourself in the dressing room in Clonus and the days after that Ulster final, and that sense of deja vu, different, very sense of deja vu. And their capacity to turn that around and come out against Westmeath 2 weeks later. And you must remember last year they got over Westmeath by a point. This time it was 5 points. Last year they lost their second game to Tyrone away from home. This time they go up and they crush Derry. So they're actually in a better place 12 months on now, coming out of an Ulster final that they've lost on penalties. So the psychological shift to be able to move away from Clonus and set up and reset and go again, I think is very, very impressive for a team that has been down the road of losing penalties to exit competitions so often. And they brought a real physical edge yesterday, a real physical edge. They looked really powerful, really athletic. I think they've introduced a lot of pace. The cornerback, Peter McGrain, he didn't play. He went off as a blood sub. He's got a real bit of pace about him. Oisín Connaughty has it. Joe McElroy. They're all able to get up the pitch and support those breakaways. I saw them in a couple of league games earlier this year, and very similar. They really countered in numbers and at pace, and I was very, very impressed with them. And like Dick, I thought they had control of the Ulster final, and they just ceased. And we spoke about that. They weren't far away. They drew the game. They drew it after 100 minutes or so, just as they did the year before. So they're doing an awful lot of things right. And it's obviously in those crunch moments. But I do give them the edge because I rate Comer's influence on this Galway team so highly. And obviously Kelly. Kelly hasn't been in great form this year. He's dealing with a lot of injuries right now, but he was superb until he got injured. Now, even after the injury, 12 months ago in Carrick and Shannon, Sean Kelly was absolutely brilliant for Galway. Comer didn't play that day, and he's a loss when he doesn't play. He brings that physical edge. There is no Armagh player one-to-one, physical and strong as they are, that will measure up to Comer. It would take a collective effort, and that takes away from other areas. So he does draw that attention that creates opportunities for others. He creates his own opportunities too. Interestingly, both managers would be happy to see the game played in Croke Park, where I don't think it will be played. But that's a fair sign of their intent. They're not shying away from Croke Park or anything like that. And why would they either? They'd like games there. But no matter where it's played, I think Armagh will bounce out of Celtic Park, and I think they will top the group. And I think we'll see a different Armagh in the All-Ireland quarterfinals too. I think they could make it all the way to the last four at least here.
I suppose Galway and Armagh had a famous quarter-final there in Croke Park a few years ago, so maybe they want to recreate some of that intensity. And one team I do want to mention from the group, somewhat the forgotten team, is Westmeath, with another heartbreaker in a round-robin game. Ray Conlon kicking away the ball, Shane Walsh picking it off just with a couple of minutes to go, the key goal that ended up separating the teams, basically. So between missing out against Armagh and Tyrone last year and then this result against Galway, they've been very unlucky in the round-robin series. But who knows, they could still beat Derry and progress to a preliminary quarter-final, so there's still a lot to play for them. Dick, the other big shock of the weekend, albeit it wasn't on TV and it was early on Saturday, so it didn't maybe get the same amount of attention as the Derry Armagh game, was Cork Donegal. Like Cork 3-9, Donegal 16 points. It wasn't a good weekend if you were lionising Jim McGuinness in a newspaper article, as a couple of people did. But what did you make of that? Like, it didn't that one really seemed to come out of nowhere. I know Cork, ran Kerry pretty close and they did beat Clare, but Donegal were riding high, and now all of a sudden they can still top the group and are probably still favourites if Tyrone beat Cork. But what did you make of that game?
Head scratcher. I like yourself, because it wasn't on TV, or it sort of gone out of my head, and I just assumed that Donegal would get their do their housework and tidy that up and get back up the road. And someone, I took the kids out of the park in Monaghan, and somebody has said to me, "Geez, did you see that result?" I says, "What?" He says, "Cork beat Donegal," and I sort of raced to the phone and I couldn't believe it. And not just that they lost, but conceded three goals, and not just berated Derry for their the porousness. And similarly, here's Donegal taking their eye off the ball and conceding three goals. Like the one criticism I've always had McGuinness, and it did rear its head a few times, was that at times there's a bit of complacency can set in, and they get caught. And we done that. That's how we beat them in the 2013 Ulster final. We just went at them, and they turned up thinking that the game was sort of won before a ball was kicked, and they're not good enough to ever play in third gear against a team that turns up in fourth and fifth. That's always been my sense of Donegal. When they're on their game, at their top in terms of their structure and their intensity, they're as good as anybody, but they're not like a Dublin or a Kerry that can turn up and win games in third gear. And that's sort of based on the sort of wee bits of scraps of coverage that we could see. It looked like a team that wasn't really tuned in and prepared for that game mentally, because you could see, like we seen against Armagh and Derry, there was Cork players just running freely through the Donegal defence, and you were sort of looking around, where are the Donegal players that were so accustomed to see closing teams down and protecting the D? So that again is symptomatic of a team that just were caught on the day, weren't tuned in, and that sort of can seep into a team. You think you're a wee bit better than you are, and you're reading the newspaper inches and all the rest, and he's sort of lucky to get that defeat when he did, because he can quickly correct the damage. He can still potentially finish top of the group and come out of it largely unscathed, and it's a lesson learned for both him and his group of players that there's potential here, but we ain't there yet. We're still effectively a Division 2 team on an upward trajectory, and that was sort of what they played like against Cork. But huge credit to Cork. It's great to see, and we've said it plenty of times over over the last couple of decades. We need a good Cork. We need to see somebody compete with Kerry and Munster, but equally, good big traditional counties compete in the All Ireland series. So it's great for the competition. So let's see where can they push on, and could they conceivably top the group against a very beatable Tyrone team in 2 weeks' time? I think they could, because Tyrone are very much there for the taking. So again, great dynamic, great to throw something a wee bit, from outside left into the conversation around the championship. So fair play to Cork.
Yes, that's a very intriguing game against Tyrone, as you say. Dick, Colm, anything you want to add on Donegal after that defeat?
No, just a general point about the type of goals that were scored over the weekend. We saw them in Derry. You mentioned Shane Walsh's goal, again from a breakdown, a turnover, and Shane Walsh takes off into an empty half of the field, and that happened in Páirc Uí Rinn as well last Saturday with Matty Taylor. So many teams, and it is very much a progression or an advancement in the game, is that they are virtually attacking with 14 players. So we're looking at situations where there are 29 players in one half of the field. And obviously there's an imperative to hold the ball and hold possession. And that's not happening when when there's so many bodies in that area of the field. Of course, other opponents, those defending, are going to get numbers around the player in possession. And with that fast break and the athleticism of some of the players to be able to get forward and to carry a ball 80 metres, Conor Turbot, Matthew Taylor, Shane Walsh, and to apply the quality of finishes at the end of that really shows the athletic performance of intercounty football teams right now. But it also shows that this advancement of committing everybody and overloading everybody into attack, it's a dangerous, risky strategy, and especially when you involve your goalkeeper far up the field as well. So I thought it was interesting that it happened at least 3 venues. You could argue that there was a turnover in the Meath Kerry game, although Meath did have numbers back. They couldn't defend the first David Clifford goal after a turnover like that. But still, it switches teams on when they turn the ball over, and then the momentum is all theirs. They have a team turning backwards, and that's what happened. That's how Cork were able to construct that victory. Cork are a very decent side. Obviously, what they did last year, they went and beat Mayo, and then they beat Roscommon, and obviously they went a third weekend against Derry and maybe ran out of a bit of steam. But Rory Maguire scored a goal that day to put them in front, and only for the quick response. I think it was Conor Doherty came back, scored a goal at the other end. That game would have been a lot tighter. So Cork are definitely generating something. They've become a lot more consistent. And they finished the league well. They got a draw against Armagh. They'd beaten Meath. They turned that game around. So results are very much coming for them. For a long time, they were very competitive against Kerry. And obviously they went and beat Clare and turned that result around from last year. So a lot of power and a lot of athleticism, and certainly improvement in Cork. Take Dick's point that maybe also the other factor is Donegal probably only had 6-day turnaround for that game. They played a Saturday night match, and then they took off on Friday. So they had very little time to get that Tyrone game out of the legs. Small thing. Maybe it wasn't the reason behind, but it makes the task more difficult when you're traveling the length of the country. I just wonder, and there may be a reason for it. Now, there may be a reason for it. Would that game not have been better to fix it on the Sunday afternoon, probably for TV coverage as well, but also to give Donegal one extra day? To be fair to them, they're traveling the length of the country. They're amateurs. So all of that should really factor into it as well. And obviously it would have made a better opening game yesterday afternoon than Meath and Kerry.
Yeah, 1 point just on Donegal. They haven't scored a goal, I don't think, since that 4-goal blitz against Derry. So that's 4 matches without a goal, which I'm sure Jim McGuinness will want to rectify next time out against Clare in their final group game. So we have Mayo beating Roscommon as well, Dick. That was kind of one of the bigger games, I suppose, over the weekend. 3 goals in the last 10 minutes, I think, kind of set up a very dramatic finish. I know Davy Burke wasn't happy, the Roscommon manager, with some of the penalty decisions, but it sets up a very intriguing game in 2 weeks' time. Dublin obviously were comfortable winners over Cavan, but themselves and Mayo will have a straight shootout for top spot. And you touched on earlier how vital it is to get that break week. Mayo ended up having to play the preliminary quarter final against Galway last year and then go right into the Dublin game the following week, and Dublin won that pretty comfortably in the end. So there's a lot at stake. The game hasn't been fixed. We don't know where it's for, but wherever that's played in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, talking about clonus, which would be great. And always bring up two teams will bring a huge crowd, you'd imagine, wherever they're going. Because I'd say a lot of the games to date for them, certainly the few of those games from Croke Park and Dublin didn't seem to bring too many up to Cavan. They're probably bursting to get out and get a bit of colour and get a wee bit of proper championship occasion under their belt. So really looking forward to that. I think it'll be a marker now for Mayo. Like we know that they're competitive. They're knocking about. To be honest with you, them playing Roscommon at the weekend didn't raise a whole pile of interest for me. We've seen that enough times over the years. There was probably nothing lost, nothing gained in that result one way or the other. It'll really say where are they at in terms of Dublin. Like, that's the benchmark, and it always has been the benchmark for Mayo. I just personally think they're not at that level. Like the Ryan O'Donoghue is sort of seems to be ploughing a bit of a lonely furrow in terms of a marquee forward. Killian O'Connor, I struggle to see how he's going to have a huge impact against a Dublin team. But listen, if they can find some of that energy, like Paddy Dorkin is such a massive miss. You can't underestimate how big a miss he is to Mayo. But listen, Kevin McStay will be looking forward to that. He'll know that, listen, if we've any business been in the All-Ireland race, we have to put our best foot forward and see how far it gets you. Look at Dublin, look at how, now pushed them all the way, that they're not, there's nobody has pushed Dublin enough yet to really know how good they are. Like, the only game we have is really the league final in many ways, and with the question mark over Derry. So it'll be really interesting to sort of see if a team really fronts up to Dublin where they're at. I feel they are a stretch ahead of teams, but that needs to be played out in a real proper championship game that we just haven't seen Dublin have to compete in yet. So listen, we finally got to the stage of the championship that we all have been waiting for, that there's jeopardy, and there was a flavour of that over the weekend. I was into Clonus I was in Donegal for running yesterday morning. I had to race back to get the Monaghan Louth game, and there was definitely a sense of championship fever in Clonus. Louth brought a good crowd. Monaghan, even though they probably didn't need to win it in terms of qualifying, they knew they had to win it for their own confidence and their own, just on the losing run. To lose a game against Louth in Clonus would have been just very, very hard to take, and it was gutsy. They grounded out. There was a real sense of occasion, and there's neither team's going to do too much damage in terms of the All-Ireland race, but you got that sense that, right, we're into championship sort of season, and there was a wee bit of at stake, and that's what we're going to see now for the rest of the year, which is great, because we've all been bemoaning the absence of that.
Yeah, we have Monaghan Meath in 2 weeks' time, which will be kind of a shootout to get that third spot or potentially second spot, depending on how the other results go. Colm, you mentioned the Kerry Meath game earlier, which was the curtain raiser on TV yesterday. Fairly drab affair. Kerry ended up, I think, hitting 218, but for long periods their attack wasn't great. I think the defence outscored the attack in the first half, and I think David Clifford's first score was that emphatic finish he put into the back of the net, kind of maybe midway through the second half. Like, what's your perspective on how Kerry are moving at the moment? Like, that was their first goal they'd scored, I think, since St. Patrick's Day when David Clifford hit the net there. So that might have been a bit of a concern for Jack O'Connor. I know that the fixtures they've been faced with hasn't required them to hit top gear or anything close to it, but still, I would have thought Jack O'Connor would have wanted to have seen a little bit more at this stage, maybe.
Yeah, and there was probably only 7 or 8 points in it, just over the 60-minute mark. And after that, Kerry piled it on. Clifford got a second goal. They were the first goals from a starting Kerry forward. This is courtesy of Sean McGoldrick's piece at the weekend. Since the second round game against Monaghan, it was Diarmid and Joe O'Connor who were scoring the goals since then. So I'd say for Clifford to score a goal and add a second one, that'll be welcome for him. I thought it was a very pedestrian game. It reminded me of one of those old Sunday evening challenge matches that opened the pitch. There was that feel about it, that it was little more than that Dick probably played in a lot of those games around Cavan and Louth and places like that years ago. They don't happen now, obviously, because of the scheduling, but that's what it felt like, that people were just leaning over the wire looking at a game take place, and they were lying on the banks at the back of Park Tailteann there, and Meath very much accepted their fate early on. They went with, I think you could probably say that Meath played with 10 recognised defenders. Now, some of them, there's attempts to convert them into half forwards and all that, but you could say they played with 10. So they accepted their fate and they played with numbers, all numbers behind the ball with the wind when playing with the wind. So it was a very, very conservative approach, obviously, to stay in the game. And Kerry didn't really do a whole lot to try and accelerate the pace of it in the first half. And it was almost by stealth, from what I could see, that they got away to lead by 10-3. Meath left a lot of scores out there. And after that, once Kerry applied a bit more pressure and up the pace, that was it. And that's been it for Meath all along. If you look back at their scores against what I would consider Division 1 teams, even though the games were in Division 2, but it was Derry Dublin last year, it was Donegal Armagh this year, they're always conceding around anything from 215 to 219. That's the score that they concede against these teams all the time. And they have never been able to build a defensive strategy to be able to withstand that against the best teams. And they really are defensively and now attacking wise. This is the second game in a row, 9 points that they've only scored 9 points. I think there'd be a lot for Kerry to work on. I'd say they would like to inject a bit more pace, but it's very, very similar to how their season tracked last year. If you remember, they lost to Mayo early on, but in the middle game against Cork, they had it tight before they got away in the end. And maybe they're timing their run a little bit more. They timed it well last year, obviously, but maybe they're timing their run. But I just think certain players, and I include David Clifford in that, he obviously came good with his 2 goals. Sean O'Shea, Paddy Clifford was held yesterday. They have yet to really, really fire and open up things. And obviously, Thomas Sullivan gets forward and scores 2 more points. He must be on the way to becoming the highest scoring defender, I think, ever in the game. He's certainly pushing towards that. He's so accurate, and that trademark shot off the outside of the left boot. So he has a lot of that. Look, they're not tested. There's no way Kerry can say they are tested after games against Monaghan and Meath that were so pedestrian. I think Louth will give them a little bit more. Certainly give them more than they gave them last year. But they will be going into an All-Ireland quarter-final. They will top the group. They will win that final game. A little bit untested, and I'd say it's a concern for Jack.
Yeah, because like Derry or Kerry are well, first world problems in many ways. The bar is just set so high for them. You know, what more can they do? Like they're knocking teams for double-digit scores and never look like losing them. They're doing what they can. Like what are they supposed to do against a Meath team? Like, God, you know, you're a Meath man, Colm. It must be just so dispiriting to watch, you know, your team turn up and have so little physicality or intensity or any sort of interest in playing a proper championship game. Like what was to be lost by there and having even right, if you're going to lose, but there's a way to lose as well. Like compete. You know, it's just so dispiriting to watch. As you say, could they have performed any worse or scored, conceded any less? And God knows they might have scored more if they had just went out. I'm not saying 15 on 15 old school traditional, but just try to bring something to the game that gets a bit of energy. Because I tried to watch a bit of it the other day, but this is so poor stuff. Like just watching Kerry players waltzing around the middle third, not a hand been put on them. For such a proud, physical county like me to watch that, you just wonder, and you see so much of it now, and that's when you see Armagh go up to Derry and bring something different. Like that's like teams need to sort of realise, listen, you have to bring something different to the table. This blanket defence, the good teams are too good now. You're not going to cod them with your blanket defence because most teams can't do it well anyway. You have to find a way to try and disrupt the flow or get possession. And I just thought that Meath game was a particularly low point for middle ranked counties trying to compete against the top, and it's almost a template of what not to do at this time of year. You know,
you mentioned physicality. There is absolutely no culture of physical play in Meath in club football anymore. You just do not.
Right? No,
you do not see it. No. It is very genteel. It is. Passive. There are no big hits. There are nothing like that. That's gone from the game. There's no culture of that. There's no culture of coaching, real culture of coaching either, where there's a progression of coaching and people are really into that, and they live and breathe it at a way that other counties you see in other counties. So that's all manifesting now, and it's got very passive on a lot of fronts. And while there are investments and all of that in the game, and I do think in time it'll improve, but until, there's no doubt about it, intensity, that word, that physical element is completely missing. And that was very clear and evident in how they received Kerry all around. There was there was an obligation almost to let them at it there. It was.
And Monaghan were the same 2 weeks ago, and that's why I was so deflated coming out of there. I said, because that whatever with me, that is so unlike Monaghan. But other teams do. You see it rearing its head every so often. That it's a case of, right, let's just try and keep the house tight and stay in the game. But the good teams, that it just ain't going to happen. You got to sort of say, well, if we're going to lose this game, how do we want to lose it? Do we want to lose with a bit of credit and have a few players at least enjoying, Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, summer's day, as you say, there's still an element of enjoyment of playing Kerry and championship football for your county. Like no Meath player could have taken any enjoyment of that experience. That should be something that you enjoy and you remember as a supporter. Like whereas that just needs to be wiped from the memory books. Anyway, we digress a wee bit, but I just thought it was a particular low point, and it didn't need to be either. But anyway.
Just to finish up, guys, I'd like to ask you about the Tailteann Cup. Obviously it's not something we've covered much at all on this show. There's so much games in the All Ireland series, to get to. Colm, do you think is it succeeding in its objective? I suppose they wanted to provide more games to certain counties, which obviously they have done, but when they're being so swallowed whole by all the other action going on, not only in the football championship, but in the hurling championship, but all the other sports going on, we've discussed that on this show, just the time of year it is as well. Like, what have you made of the kind of the project that is the Tailteann Cup?
Well, in theory, it's a good idea. In practice, because it is submerged by everything else, it is not getting any chance to breathe at this time of year, at this stage of the competition. Now, when it gets to semi-finals and finals, that will open up. Some teams just haven't embraced it. I mean, Offaly's performance, Longford's performance, the competition is almost designed with them in mind, and yet they threw the hands up in the air at it this year and says, no, not for us. But you have to wonder, what is for some counties if they're not willing to try and motivate themselves and prepare themselves for a competition that they have an outside chance of winning. And obviously you look at the top four seeds. The top seeds in the competition were Kildare, Sligo, Fermanagh and Down. So they're the top seeds, and they're the teams that have topped their groups to go through to the quarterfinals of the Tailteann Cup. And really the winners are more than likely, quite likely, obviously, to come from that quartet. So maybe there's actually another competition below the Tailteann Cup, but I think you'd be diluting it at that stage, that there is a gap there between the best teams like Kildare and Down, Fermanagh as well, Sligo. Antrim would be hanging on to that as well, but I think the rest I just don't see any push from anybody else. It'd be great to see a team like Tipperary or Wicklow or something, but it's not going to happen because they're just not going well to be able to come from a lower division and maybe take it on. But I don't think it's going to happen. Obviously, the Tailteann Cup semi-finals get their place in the sun on that Sunday afternoon, and that's obviously irritates hurling people because the All-Ireland hurling quarterfinals are pushed into Saturday, and they're going to be very early Saturday because of scheduling, TV scheduling this time. So the Tailteann Cup gets their space at the semi-finals, and that was always part of the initial package, that they would get TV coverage and those prime Sunday afternoon slots. And obviously the final takes place before one of the All-Ireland semi-finals. So at that stage, it will generate a bit of interest. But interestingly enough, Kildare seem to be doing what they had to do, and they've picked up, and they appear to be going after this competition as a springboard maybe that Westmeath have used. Obviously it hasn't happened for Meath, but Westmeath certainly, when they won it first year, and their Sam Maguire performances, they've really built on that since. So Kildare might be looking at this as an opportunity to reset. I still think Down are the more likely winners of the competition.
It is the platform for teams to progress. Like this business of having another one, like how many tiers do you go down? Like that Longford would put more effort in to winning an O'Byrne Cup in January column.
Yeah.
That's Longford's problem. It's not up to the GA to create another competition to try and get interested. There's enough there for them. Like it really is up to counties to get their house in order and commit to it or not, and stop making excuses and all the rest. Because if the county and the team aren't interested, well, then you're going to have the empty stadiums. Like Jesus, there was 75. Did I see that right? Attended Waterford and Longford.
Someone suggested that. I don't know, Dick, if that's. I presume it was.
There was more than I had an under 12 game in Clontibbert on Saturday morning. There was more than that added. But that's a symptom of it. So counties need to sort of embrace it or whatever. I don't know, but that is pitiful. Again, this probably the argument, there's too many games to try and get to when it actually becomes meaningful. Maybe it's a case of get straight into a knockout 16 and see where it goes from there or something, because it's just been completely, as you say, consumed by everything else. And it is a bit of an irrelevance, let's be honest with you, at this time of the year, and it's going to continue to be unless something is changed.
I actually think the best system, sorry, I actually think the best, having watched the last 2 years of this system, I actually think the qualifier system, the 4-round qualifier system, then into the quarterfinals, I actually think it's just the best one in terms of jeopardy and stakes. And as you said, like counties like Longford would have put a lot more. They took a few big scalps over the years in the qualifiers. I think beat a couple of Ulster teams.
For me, that's the Monaghan one year in 2016. They beat Monaghan. They've also beaten Derry in the qualifiers. So it's a bit of a mystery as to how they have. I won't say they've turned the nose. Well, maybe I should say they've
just checked out, Colm. That's a team that's just probably gone. Boys going to America. They're doing other stuff. They're just done. They're done for the year.
I think change is coming. Obviously, the CCCC, the GA committee that oversees competitions and fixtures and everything else, they are looking at streamlining everything. And one of the suggestions in circulation is that maybe the provincial champions will get access back to the All-Ireland quarterfinals directly, and that there would be 3-team groups then, and there'd be a lot less games. And obviously they'd be played off quite quickly in a condensed format, but you'd have 2 games. So the numbers, there'd be a lot less games, and the jeopardy, to use that word, would be very quick and very sudden. It'd be a lot different. Whether that comes into play, whether the schedule would allow it, All-Ireland or provincial champions could be waiting quite a while for their next game. There could be a 4 or 5, 6 week, 5 week gap there. That mightn't be great either. So that will emerge and unfold in the next few weeks.
Yeah. Well, for now, we've so a very exciting final round to look forward to in 2 weeks' time. In the meantime, I'd like to thank Colm and Dick for joining me on this week's episode of the Throne Football Podcast. We'll be back next time with another show. And in the meantime, you can subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or listen on the Irish Independent website. So until next time, thanks so much for listening, and goodbye.